everyone, as you know, I've been living for completely free for the last 2 years by buying a bunch of Bitcoin in advance, equivalent to 18 months of living expenses. That Bitcoin has radically increased in value, far out exceeding my monthly or weekly or daily expenses, thereby enabling me to live 100% off the appreciating price of Bitcoin for the last 2 years. Now, it's not just keeping up, it's like way ahead. So I don't know what the number is, but I started out with 18 months of living expenses, moved over to Coinbase in Bitcoin, and exclusively using the Coinbase Bitcoin debit card, and using that for all of my expenses. And Bitcoin has radically outrun my living expenses, meaning the account now has 3.5 years or 4 years of living expenses in it, maybe even more than that. I'll try to post an update at some point. But there's actually two different strategies you can pursue when you are trying to live for free on a Bitcoin standard. One of them is to front load Bitcoin into an account like Coinbase and then use a debit card tied to that Bitcoin. Wait to spend that Bitcoin until the price of Bitcoin has risen by at least somewhere between 15 to 25%. And then obviously not spend the Bitcoin if the price drops back down to whatever you paid for it. But anyway, that is the strategy I use. It's working fabulously well. Well, I posted a couple videos from Jack Mallers. Jack Mallers is fantastic. He is brilliant. He is the founder and CEO of Strike, Strike, which is a Bitcoin company. They do a lot of different stuff, especially around international remittances and just generally a platform for people to onboard into Bitcoin. The reason I recommend Coinbase is publicly traded, meaning they have a lot more scrutiny. And when I'm recommending anything to anyone, I'm always going for the largest, the most reputable, the least likely for something bad to happen option. And so I recommend Coinbase, and Coinbase has a debit card that lets you spend Bitcoin, whereas Strike does not. So Jack Mallers rolled out a feature that I don't think Coinbase has yet, which is bill pay. So if you are using the Strike app, you can not only deposit money to buy Bitcoin into the Strike app, you can also pay your bills with the Strike app, meaning you can link it up because it has a bank draft, ACH sort of information, routing number, account number, and all that, so that you can link it up to your electric bill or your water bill or your mortgage or whatever, and those things can automatically be paid by Bitcoin. So Jack Mallers' strategy is basically buy everything with credit cards that allow for the highest possible number of points or cash back or whatever it is you're trying to get, and then pay off those credit card bills at the end of the month before they accrue any interest at all with Bitcoin. So both strategies work. In some ways, he would argue that his strategy is superior to mine in that, well, I'm going to give you the reasons he would argue that his strategy is superior, and then I'll tell you the reasons I think my strategy is superior, acknowledging that it's a judgment call. But anyway, the reasons he would say his strategy is superior is because you're spending dollars now and paying them off with Bitcoin later, thereby allowing Bitcoin to appreciate more than my strategy, which involves spending the Bitcoin literally at the point of that you're spending it. Like when you do contactless payments or swipe the Coinbase debit card, it liquidates the Bitcoin to pay the merchant immediately. Whereas with his strategy, he swipes a credit card, and then obviously the credit card bill is due a month later. And so that enables him to pay off that bill with Bitcoin that has stayed Bitcoin an extra month before it was liquidated to pay the bill. So he would say, look, you can get, a lot of cash back dollars, you can get airline miles, you can get all sorts of crazy stuff with credit cards these days. So why not do that and then just pay it off later? He also says in his video that they have not rolled out a debit card yet that allows you to spend Bitcoin because they feel like their clients are just fine with the strategy he proposes. Now, as somebody who spent 11 years running a software company, I can tell you that anytime something complicated needs to be done, like introducing a debit card that works with Bitcoin, it's a lot easier to tell your customer base that your customer base doesn't want it than to actually implement it. So in this case, a debit card tied to Bitcoin is not super easy to implement because you have to link it to your, Bitcoin trading platform so that every time a transaction comes through, you can immediately execute a Bitcoin transaction to buy or sell, or in this case, sell Bitcoin to give the money to a vendor. So it's not a trivial feature to roll out. So my guess is Strike, Jack Mallers' company, at some point will roll out a debit card that lets you spend Bitcoin. But right now, Jack Mallers is saying that their customers don't want it yet, and that his strategy of just using credit cards and paying them off with Bitcoin is not just good enough, but he would argue is superior. Now, why do I like my approach better? Well, for a number of reasons. One, it lets you actually spend Bitcoin. So yes, you can, pay for things with US dollars on a credit card and then pay off the credit card bill with Bitcoin, which is what Jack Mallers is doing. And he's been living on his sort of approach to living for free. I think for a year. I think he said he's done that for a year. I've done my approach for 2 years now. But anyway, the reason I like mine better is because it's a more direct way of using Bitcoin. You're actually spending Bitcoin at the time of sale in the exact proportion to what you're buying. You're not just racking up credit card debt for 29 days and then benefiting by liquidating Bitcoin to pay it off. Also, with my strategy, it eliminates the variability of the price of Bitcoin. So, for example, a week or two back, my family was looking, deciding on what restaurant we were going to eat at. Bitcoin was above $100,000 per coin. And so we went to a nice restaurant. So when you're using my approach with the Coinbase debit card, you have the ability to make real-time decisions about how you feel about things and what you're willing to spend money on, as opposed to making those decisions now. So I would not have been as comfortable saying, hey, let's go to a nice restaurant. Everybody can order anything they want. We'll put it on a credit card, and let's hope Bitcoin's still above $100,000 at the end of the month when the credit card bill comes due. I don't like living my life that way. I would much prefer to know exactly what something is costing me at the time I pay it, rather than taking the up and downside risk of Bitcoin. Now, over time, Bitcoin's going to go up more than it goes down. So if you average it out over time, Jack Mallers' strategy of, paying for everything with a credit card and paying it off later with the bill pay feature of Strike, over time, that way, presumably, almost certainly will outperform my strategy because, again, you're getting an extra 29 or 30 days of Bitcoin price performance. But I just like to live a little bit more sort of concretely grounded, where I know exactly what everything's costing me. I know exactly at the time I'm spending the money what my purchasing power is as a human, rather than accruing a debt in US dollars on a on a credit card, and then not knowing exactly, what my net worth will be by the time the credit card bill comes due. So that being said, again, I see benefits both ways. What's more important than anything is to get as much of your assets in Bitcoin as possible, as compared to fiat currencies, which is like the US dollar. It's government-made currencies that are made up out of thin air and only ever lose value. So both of the strategies involve, living on Bitcoin, exclusively on Bitcoin, and in both his case and my case, attempting to touch US dollars as little as conceivably possible. And in both cases, you can live almost completely free of US dollars, other than in my case, where I still have to pay the occasional babysitter with a check when they don't have a better way of getting paid, or they just don't take Bitcoin or something like that, or, contractors for plumbing or something like that. Sometimes you just run into people that they don't take debit cards or credit cards, and they don't take bill pay, and they just want a check. So I have to keep some money in old school bank accounts to pay that sort of stuff. But anyway, so Jack Mallers has a great strategy. I feel like I've got a great strategy. Both of them accomplish the exact same thing, which is front loading assets into Bitcoin and then paying them off later when the Bitcoin has appreciated. The difference in my case is I'm front loading it and then using the Bitcoin real time as needed. In his case, he's front loading the Bitcoin, paying for everything on a credit card, and then paying off the credit card bill with Bitcoin. But both strategies work. His is clearly working great for him. Mine's working great for me. both of them are recommended. And again, I guess mine's more conservative because it means, you're never in a situation where you've got a credit card debt and then Bitcoin that dropped 5 or 10%. And then suddenly you're like, woo, that's a heavier credit card debt. I've been living high on the hog for a month and now I'm paying it off with Bitcoin that's down 10%. In my case, I never run into that because I know what the price of Bitcoin is at any given time, or at least a ballpark. It doesn't go up and down that much in very short periods of time. So I can comfortably know that, I'm never going to end up upside down ever. Now, in the case of my, Coinbase debit card, I'm so far sort of to the good side that it really doesn't matter. And I could easily do the Jack Mallers strategy, without any worries. Again, but I just like the certainty of knowing exactly what I'm paying at the time I'm paying it and being all settled up with the world all the time without ever really owing any debts to anyone outstanding. Versus in Jack Mallers' case, he's always got a credit card bill due at some point. And even if he pays it off once a month, the very first time he buys something on another credit card, he has yet another credit card debt hanging out there. And I just like living completely and 100% debt free. But both strategies work great. The last thing I'll say is great job to Strike for rolling out bill pay. So that's a fantastic feature. I don't think Coinbase has bill pay yet. I don't know what their plans are on that front, but good job to Strike for leading the way. Maybe Coinbase already does. If so, I've just never seen it. But I've also never really looked for it. But anyway, great job to Strike for rolling out that feature. It is one more way to live exclusively on Bitcoin. And I do get asked regularly by people, how can I live 100% on Bitcoin, including paying utilities, paying a mortgage, paying all of that. And with Strike's bill pay feature, you can do that now. You can live exclusively on Bitcoin. And when the bank drafts come through for each of those services, it will immediately liquidate however much Bitcoin is required to pay that utility. And it will pay the utility just like bank draft works on a traditional bank account. It's just the money sits in Bitcoin until the absolute last conceivable second, which is where you want it, because Bitcoin over time performs better than the US dollar. So you want to be sitting on as much Bitcoin as long as possible in all scenarios as you can, rather than sitting in US dollars and having to sit in that US dollar balance. So I am a huge fan of Jack Mallers. He's a genius. His company is great. Again, I recommend Coinbase mainly because they're publicly traded, and so they're just larger and they've been around longer and all of those things, but also because they have a debit card that Strike does not yet have. But again, good job for Strike rolling out bill pay. I think they're kind of the first to do that. I'm not aware of other providers that have that. So anyway, have a great evening, everyone. Thanks.